Hi guys, today I'm going to be going over the equipment that I use to film all of my YouTube videos. Now there is quite a bit of it. Starting with what I'm using to shoot this video right now. Now I don't usually use this, but this is just my Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge smartphone, which does have the advantage of being able to shoot in 4K or 1080p 60, but the main reason why I like to use a real camera, which we'll talk about in a minute, is because this has the advantage of optical zoom instead of the digital zoom that this camera would have. But anyhow, I'll show you everything. I'll show you the cameras, the microphones, tripods, everything else. So first off, this is the main camera that I use to shoot these videos. So this is a Panasonic HCV770. This shoots 1080p video at 60 frames a second. Fairly nice camera. I think it's a 1/2.3 inch sensor. Actually gives you some nice depth of field. I'm not sure what the aperture on this lens is. It might tell you. Anyhow, this is actually a really nice camera. It costs like $500, something like that. It actually might be a little cheaper now because we're going into 4K these days, and the 1080p cameras are more or less being phased out. But anyway, this has like 20 times optical zoom on it, as well as 50 times intelligent zoom, whatever they call it. But anyway, this actually has a 5.1 channel microphone on it, which I'm not very impressed with, so I don't use that. I'll talk about microphones in a minute, but anyhow, actually shoots really nice video. Probably better than what the cell phone is, I would say, but then again, the cell phone's 4K, and I'm always impressed as to how good the video quality is on this phone. But anyhow, that's the main camera that I use. Alright, so the next camera that I use is my old main camera, which is a Sony Handycam CX330. Now this also shoots 1080p video at 60 frames a second. This has a smaller image sensor size, and that makes the video look grainier, and it doesn't have the same depth of field. By depth of field, I mean if I put my fingers here, you'll notice how the background blurs out and you can see my fingers. That's depth of field. That sort of bokeh effect is what they call it in the industry, I do believe. But anyhow, this also has optical zoom. This has like 30x optical zoom, I think. Fairly nice camera. I did like this one because it has like 3 hours of battery life. This one's like 1.5 or something like that. So this is what I use to do all the time-lapse shots of 3D printing. Now, with that, I'll show you the setup later, but I don't actually record with this camera. I hook it up an HDMI capture card, which is this little guy. So this is a StarTech capture card. Now, I call this an HDMI capture card. That's not really true because this thing will capture just about anything except for the display port. But anyhow, because what I do is I use OBS to capture a monitor, and then I also use OBS to capture the signal from this camera. And then I can record that all into one video, and then it makes it way easier to edit. I'll show you the other cables that I have here for this capture card. So on the front of this thing, it's got 3 ports. It's got a DVI port, an HDMI port, and that little S-video port, I think it is. But you can plug in other adapters to this to get basically any video signal that you can think of, except for DisplayPort, and I forget what the other one is. That's like really like a standardized industry camera thing. But anyway, that plugs into there. This is component video, RGB, and then this also has the RCA audio jacks. And that's kind of another reason why I don't use a smartphone camera all the time, is because the focus hunting is kind of annoying. I can see it on the screen now, but this also has the ability to capture standard composite video. That's got the audio there, and then that one video cable, and then this is S-video. And this also has the ability to capture VGA. So pretty much capture whatever you want with this. Actually, it actually works pretty good. It's got good video quality. It's 1080p 60 again, USB 3.0 on the other end of it. So anyhow, I'll move that off to the side. Now, I'm not sure that I've actually used any of these cameras on this channel at all, But these are little get up, get to action cameras. Now, the sort of GoPro knockoff things, these are down to slightly over $100, I think. So they're actually a pretty good deal. Again, they shoot 1080p 60. I think they'll actually shoot 2K at 30 frames a second as well. So 1440p, but yeah, I use 1080p 60 as a standard on pretty much all this stuff, except for this video, which will be in 4K just for the fun of it, because this camera can. But anyhow, I actually have a few of these things. I've got one that's slightly melted because it got a little bit too close to a fire. I think it still at least kind of works. Yeah, you can see that. But I've also got one more that's still in a box that I'm kind of planning on doing a review on. So we'll see if that actually works out. But anyhow, I do have one more camera that I'm pretty sure I've never actually used on this channel, but I'll show it anyway. This was the first HD camera that I have. This shoots at 1080p 30. This is a Panasonic something or another. I think it says on the bottom here. Or not Panasonic, sorry, JVC. Yeah, that's the model number right there, GZHM35BU. So, yeah, full HD. It's got 40x optical zoom, which is pretty cool, but yeah, I don't use this anymore. It's just the video quality's not up to it. So, what else do we have here? Let's go into microphones. A microphone that I would usually use, just for talking and stuff like that, is this little guy. This is a Sony ECM-3S or something like that. I'll correct that if it's wrong, and I don't think it says on here. So, anyway, it's a little Sony microphone. It is actually stereo, and it sounds pretty good for, it's only about a $15 mic or something like that. That plugs straight into my other camera. This main camera has a mic in port. I don't think any of the other ones do. Anyway, this is the microphone I usually like to use for these talking shots, because when I start to move around from the camera, it doesn't start to mess up. And with this right next to my face, it does sound quite a bit better than the microphones that are built into the camera. And for whatever reason, the mics that are built into this camera are really, really quiet. But as soon as you plug this into it, it sounds just fine. So, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I also have a Rode Video Micro Pro. Now, this is a little shotgun mic. I use this on occasion as well. This is actually a really nice microphone, but I tend to use the lapel mic just because that gets the mic closer to your face. That generally sounds a little bit better. Along with that, that microphone mounts with a cold shoe mount, and then this is the cold shoe mount that came with this camera, and it just kind of goes back up in there. But anyhow, next thing, actually I forgot a camera. I shouldn't have moved on from this yet, and I don't think I've used this in any videos on this channel yet. Maybe that'll change in the future, because this thing's actually pretty cool. This is a Samsung Gear 360. Now, this is capable of shooting this 4K spherical video, which is actually pretty cool. It's pretty fun to mess with. You get some really interesting shots with these things. But anyhow, going on to smaller and smaller things. I've got a fair number of tripods. I've got two bigger tripods, and I've got a couple of these little guys that are like this. Got that one, and I've got this other little one here. So a couple little tabletop tripods. I use this one with the 3D print setup. I put this camera on it. I put this on top of all my boxes of filament, and then I hook all that up, and I'll actually show you the setup for that later. Anyhow, alright, so next thing, I've got a few lenses for the main camera in particular. I don't use these all the time. This is a wide angle lens, but the main use that I have for this is if you unscrew. Oh wait, sorry, this isn't the wide angle lens. This is the telephoto lens. There's 2.2 telephoto lens, which I don't use that very often at all on this channel. I'll just use the zoom. I won't screw a lens on just for that. The other one that's in a bag like this is a wide-angle lens, which I think is 0.45. These aren't really the most expensive lenses that you get, 0.43. But the main use that I have for this is if you unscrew this lens, you actually have a macro lens. So this is good for getting close to circuit boards and 3D prints, things like that you want to look really close at. And here we've got some different filters. This is the adapter that goes from like 52 millimeters, I think it is, that all these lenses are 52 millimeters, and then the ring that's on the camera is actually 49. So this is the adapter that makes these lenses fit that camera. What's on here now is a UV filter. That's actually pretty useless because there's generally UV filters already in the camera, but what this is good for is if you screw this onto the camera, you have essentially a lens protector. So when you're doing soldering and things like that, you can screw this on if you don't want that, messing up with your camera. This also has a couple other lenses in it. This is just an ND filter, so basically sunglasses for your camera. It's good if you take it outside. Other than that, not too useful. And then this one is supposed to correct for fluorescent lighting colors, I think, which I've never tried to use it. But anyhow, I've also got like some lens cleaning supplies. All this stuff came in a kit. And it came with like lens cleaning supplies, and it actually came with this little tripod. That's why it's got the same brand on it. But next thing, USB power banks. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing. I've got a fair number of them. Obviously, these are multi-purpose devices, but all of these cameras now have the ability to be charged via USB. This camera's actually got the cable built right into it, which was one of the huge selling points of this camera, if I remember right. But yeah, that camera's USB. The camera, my main camera, the cable to charge it is actually just a USB to DC jack connector. So nothing special about that. And this camera, I even modified the cable on this and cut the end off of it because it takes 5.2 volts, I think it's rated at, which is close enough to the USB spec. And I just put a USB connector in line with it. So all three of my cameras there, capable of being charged with USB. Of course, this thing is. That's charged via a little micro USB port there. But basically, and I also have, I made this in an episode of 3D Printed a while back. This is to mount this power bank. It goes in the other way. But I can mount this power bank, and then this just clips right onto my tripod. So that way there, it basically extends the runtime of this camera from like an hour and a half to, I don't know, 10 hours or something like that. It'll last for quite a long time off of this power bank. Anyhow, so that's another piece of equipment that I have. Actually, I made that one. And then these little power banks, they actually have like shirt clips that you can put on them. I thought one of them actually did have one of those on there, but anyway, you can actually take these and clip them to the strap, the hand strap, and then just plug the USB cable in, especially in this one with a real short USB lead. But anyhow, that works quite nicely as well. And we're running out of stuff. I do have this microphone, which I've been meaning to do a video on, actually. This is some... it's kind of weird. It's actually a solar-powered electric microphone, realistic branded. And this is made for, like, Radio Shack, I think the box says. Somewhere on it. But yeah, it's an old microphone. I got this from someone, or they gave it to me or something like that. But yeah, I haven't actually used this in a video or anything. I kind of want to make a video just showing that thing off. But yeah, another mic that I have and don't really use. So anyway, that pretty much wraps up that. I've got another tripod that I can show you. Then I've got to take the camera off of the main tripod. So this is kind of my secondary backup tripod, if you will. This is a Targus, and it's got the model number on it there, TR5060TR, or TG5060TR. So this is like a 54-inch tripod, I want to say, something like that. It's nothing too fancy. You know, it's got a little pan head on there. It's not meant to be real smooth or anything, but aluminum tripod, nice lightweight, fairly sturdy as well. Does a decent job. It was the first tripod that I had, and then I got this one because I wanted something a little bit taller. So I've gone ahead and I've put my camera on the other tripod so I can show you the one that I was using. So this is the main tripod that I use for this channel. Fairly decent. I think it was only like a $30 tripod or something like that. It does a good job though. Haven't had a camera fall off of it yet. And somewhere over here, there we go, Exit branded. I bought this off of Amazon, so there's the model number. Does a fairly nice job. I think it's like a 72-inch tripod, so it'll go up about 6 feet in the air, which is pretty nice. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and move on to editing equipment, and I'm going to show you the setup that I use for the 3D print capturing. So one more small piece of equipment in this small little glyph type thing, which this just goes around your phone, which is what I was just using to mount my phone to the tripod. So this has got a little tripod nut glued in the bottom of that. And yeah, this is basically just a clamp to hold your phone. So that's that. I'll go ahead and start showing you the editing computer and the 3D print capture setup. Alright, so this is the bottom of the editing setup. This is actually a monitor which is just kind of set on the floor. It's propped up on a box here. And yes, this is kind of a mess, but anyhow, that's that. Now this is actually here for a very specific reason, and that is for the 3D print capturing, because OBS doesn't really like to capture Repetier host as a window for some reason. And I'll show you how all this gets set up later. Anyhow, this is the actual main computer here. This has an i7-4790K in it. It has a GTX 970, 32 gigs of RAM. About 6.25 terabytes in total hard drive space, though. It's a 250 gig boot drive, 3 terabyte hard drive that I actually work off of, and then a 3 terabyte backup drive. Anyhow, that actually does a really nice job cutting through video editing. Fairly fast computer, even though it's a couple generations behind now. This is the 3D printer. This is a RipRap Prusa i3. This gets used every once in a while on the channel. I do episodes of 3D printed, though they're not very popular, so anyhow, yeah, that's where I just randomly print stuff. It could be useful stuff, could be stuff off of Thingiverse, but anyhow. And then this is the main monitor, which is mounted onto the wall. Anyhow, and then there's the keyboard and the mess of 3D printing filament and other notes and things in here. And this is the audio amp for the setup, which is just a cheap, like $20 audio amp. And then these speakers, which I got for free because someone was going to throw them away, but they actually work really well. Pretty nice Sony speakers, actually. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and set up the 3D print capture and show you how that gets set up and how it works with OBS. And I'm also going to show you what I use for screen capture as well. Alright, so as for the 3D print setup, I've got the camera just sets up on here. This is my Sony CX330 camera. I usually use this one because I will tend to shoot some other videos in the meantime anyway on the other camera. And I like getting some use out of this one. But anyhow, I've just got the HDMI cable that I believe came with this camera. Maybe it came with this camera or my other camera, but anyhow. That just goes through into my capture device, and then the capture device is plugged into the USB 3.0 port on the back of the computer. I do have a 3.0 port on the front. I just set this up so that it works in the back. I mean, I've had some issues with this port in the front with it coming disconnected on the inside of the computer for some reason. I don't really know what's going on with that, but yeah, so I want it to be reliable, so I plug this into the back. If it's going to be a really long 3D print, I'll also hook up power to this camera. And then the Repetier host software goes onto this secondary monitor here. And you'll see up here in OBS, we'll have the view that the camera has and the view of that second monitor. Now, the reason why I don't just do a window capture in OBS is because for whatever reason, the center part where the preview is, it will not capture that in any other way but just doing a monitor capture. So yeah, I have no idea what the deal with that is, but I have to use that second monitor in order to get it. Either that, or I could just use this monitor and not touch the computer at all during the print, but that's no fun because I actually tend to do video editing and things like that as I watch it print. So anyhow, also I do record the time lapses in 30 FPS because once you go into Adobe Premiere Elements, which is what I use as the editing software, and you speed it up by 100 times or whatever, you can pull 60 frames per second out of that. In fact, you could actually pull something like 6,000 frames a second out of it if you really wanted to. So I could record it, and I'm actually thinking about turning this down to like 10 frames a second just to save hard drive space, and that would actually make it easier to edit with the smaller files and things like that. I think the last print that I did was about an hour long or something like that, maybe 2 hours long, but it's about a 30 gigabyte file that came off of this. But yeah, you can see we actually do get audio through the HDMI capture as well. You can see that changing with my voice. But yeah, that's this. I actually use, another thing is I use the NVENC codec or whatever it is. So yeah, there we go. That goes MP4 and that NVENC codec. So that actually uses the GeForce GTX 970 graphics card in order to encode the video. 30 megabits per second, which is what I got it set at, which is kind of high actually. But anyhow, that's just what I use in order to record this, or the 3D printing. I'll show you my screen capture setup as well, which obviously right now is not very good because I'm just using a camera. But anyhow, if I go over to recording, you'll see it changes to this screen, and we've got to change the profile to recording as well. And if we look at the settings in this, now this will be 60 frames a second. You'll see that down at the bottom actually. 59.94 frames a second, which is the standard for 60 here in America because that's how our cameras are set up. But yeah, we'll go back into settings and take a look at this. This will be the same, I do believe, with the streaming and recording and both set up there. This is set with the output mode. It's simple for some reason, but anyway, yeah, still 30 megabits per second. Hardware encoding, which is NVENC again. Audio bitrate 160. Yeah, high quality, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's how that's set up. Nothing too fancy with this. Though the hardware encoding, I really like that because you only end up using like 1 or 2% of your CPU in order to encode the video. And it just uses the graphics card mostly. But anyway, that's that setup. The last thing I want to talk about is the lighting setup in this room, which just went through a bit of an upgrade. But anyhow, that's the LED strips just run all the way around the outside perimeter of this room. Plus there's a light in the middle, which isn't really that bright. But anyway, and then above the desk there's a whole lot more light strip. But that does improve the video qualities quite a bit, because it gets way brighter when I turn those lights on. It's a little over 100 watts worth of LEDs, I think. But anyway, that's all of the filming equipment that I have. So that's all I have for you guys today, guys. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment if you have one. You can also go follow me on Twitter. Link will be in the description for that. And, well, I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.